Well, Alan, we're talking about selecting your first motorbike. So tell us of your experience when you bought your Vulcan S.
Yeah, we've talked about this several times, and I think a lot of people, when they're either re-entering the motorcycling reins, if you will, if you were a motorcyclist like you and I were back in the day, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then got away from it for a while, and then wanted to get back into it, or you're a brand new rider where you just got your license and you're looking around to figure out what bike to do. I was in the same boat about a year ago, and one of the things that was nice here in Michigan versus California, in Michigan, I went to one dealer, and that dealer had all the makes and brands of motorcycles: the Suzuki, the Kawasaki, the Honda, and the Yamaha, all of them. And so it was. I just went on the showroom and started looking at bikes, and there was a myriad of them. There was the Kawasaki Vulcan S, 650 cc's. There was the Yamaha Bolt, which is like 900 cc's. The Suzuki, I think it was the M50, which is about 850 cc's. And then the Honda Rebel, which was like 500 cc's. And here in the States, we don't have restrictions on horsepower, bike size, or anything. They want you to go to a MSF class, a motorcycle safety foundation class, get your license, pass the driving and the written test, and then you can go buy a bike. It's not like Australia and other parts of the world where there's restrictions. I guess Europe has restrictions. The UK may have some, India, Australia, other places where you're limited with size and horsepower. And so here we don't have that. If I wanted to go buy a huge Goldwing, I could have done that. What I did was I looked at the medium-sized bikes, if you will, and I looked at their styling. I sat on each one in the showroom, just kind of looked things over. And the one that kind of drew me because of styling and size and just fit, if you will, was the Kawasaki Vulcan S. I'm sorry, but I've never been a real big fan of Yamaha. Honda has a unique or different styling on their Rebel, and the Suzuki M50 just seemed like a big motorcycle to me. And it is a heavier bike. It's 600 plus pounds. So anyway, then I did a bunch of research and determined that the Kawasaki Vulcan S would be the best fit for me. And then I went in, and whenever you go looking for a motorcycle, you're always there's two principal factors here. One, probably, maybe, cost. How much is it going to cost me? How much is it going to cost me to insure it? And whether it meets the regulations if you're under some restricted type of regulations with your country. And then the other part is the styling. What style do you like? What style don't you like? It appeals to a lot of different people. And then how does the bike fit you? One of the things about the Vulcan S is they do have that ergo fit. So you can move. They have two different style handlebars. You can move the foot pegs around back and forth. You have seats differences. You can fit the bike to you. So a lot of riders find that a very genuine thing to do. And Kawasaki, I think, is the only one that does that. So all of those things is what led me to the Vulcan S. And as I said in some other videos, the thing that I worried most about was the 650 engine, whether it would have enough power. I was way off on that one. That bike has a lot of power, more than I would need or want. Again, it's not restricted, so anything above 6,000 RPM, it just leaps like a rocket ship. So, and we could talk about that in a couple minutes here, but yeah, the Kawasaki Vulcan S really fit what I was looking for. It was a smaller bike, easy to handle, easy to maintain. The styling, all of it. So,
yeah, I think it was in the late 70s that in Australia that they first brought in the law that you must ride a 250cc for the first year. And what the manufacturers did was really spice up the 250, so they were really powerful. So then they as you found out, they limited the horsepower. That's how they got around that.
Yeah, yeah. And when I went looking, I didn't. When you mentioned lambs, I had no idea what lambs was. So I had to look. There's PDF files and stuff online, and lambs basically is two things now: 650 cc's or less, and then the second for new riders, and or if you don't have a license, or if you haven't been riding, and then the second part is the power. It's 150 kW per ton. So that's kind of a weird deal, but what that, and the ton in Australia is 2,200 pounds, and in America it's 2,000 pounds. But when you do all of the math, that equates to about 45 horsepower, roughly 45 to 46 horsepower. So that's where they're at. It's a power to weight ratio, 45 to 46 horsepower, and a size variance of about 650 cc's.
Yeah, the LAMS means Learner Approved Motorcycle Scheme, I believe. So that applies to anyone who gets a license in Australia for the first 2 years of their license. The government has a list of bikes, and there's over 500 bikes on their government list that are approved for learners in their first 2 years. So that's crazy. America doesn't have that.
Yeah, there's no restrictions. And when I talked about the Suzuki being 800 plus cc, the Bolt being 900, you said there was no way that in Australia you could get that bike. And so then you gave me a kind of a list from that list of approved stuff of bikes that would be okay for a brand new rider. And so I kind of looked some of that stuff up, and we can talk about that if you want to do that.
Yeah, well, I'll just say how I came to choose the Vulcan S. Basically, I was looking at one or two bikes, the Harley Davidson Street 500 or the Quacker Vulcan S. Now, my favoritism lent towards Kawasaki because, like yourself, in the 80s, I was riding, for me, it was the Kawasaki 1000. That was a great bike. So, but of course, as you said, and it's true, everyone wants a Harley Davidson. So I had a look at what was available for under the LAMS system, and it was only the Harley Davidson Street 500. And when I looked at the bike, and I didn't like the way it looked compared to the Vulcan S, the cruiser style and sleek style of the Vulcan S. And the other thing I didn't really like about the Harley Davidson Street 500 was the lack of electronics. As a starter, I wanted the gear indicator on the bike and also the fuel gauge. And the Harley Davidson didn't have either of those two. And the Kawasaki Vulcan S has a whole lot more electronics. So that was the other reason why I went for the Vulcan S.
Yeah, the Harley 500 Street isn't really a popular bike here. I would say most riders, if they're going to go to Harley here in the United States, they're probably looking at the 750, maybe the 883, or the bobbers, which are much, much larger, 1100, 1200, 1300 cc's. That's where they're headed, or the big street glides. So, yeah, and Harley obviously has a lot of accessories. They've got an excellent name recognition. Everybody wants one. But they're expensive. They're also expensive. Yeah. So when I went looking, cost was another part of that. I really didn't want to spend more than $7,000 on a motorcycle. And the ones I looked at were at that $7,000 range or lower. And Harley Davidson dealers, generally speaking, won't deal to their price. It's the price that's advertised. They might give you a little bit of a break, but it's not much. Here in the States, like I said, I was lucky with Michigan. They had all of these bikes. They had a bunch of new ones that were from last year's edition, and so they were willing to wheel and deal. And that is why I got the bike that I bought, the Vulcan S, for like $5,500. So it was Now with all bikes here in the States, you have to pay taxes and destination fees and all that stuff. So I don't really add that into the cost. That's what happens, but. It met my need I rolled out of the showroom $6,000, under $6,000 for that bike with everything added, but the bike itself was only 5,500. And that part of my research was looking for accessories, for those bikes. So the Vulcan S is a popular bike, and so there's a lot of aftermarket parts, as we know, seats, exhausts, all kinds of different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at the Lambs list. Like I said, there's over 500 bikes on it. So some people choose, for example, the Kawasaki Ninja 300. But
Yep.
I didn't look at the lower capacity bikes. I just chose, how many did I choose? Five of the higher capacity bikes that new riders might buy. And I understand you've done a look at them. So the first one was a Honda Rebel CMX 500. Actually,
Yeah, that's correct.
I'll just say what they were, then we can go through one by one. Honda Rebel CMX 500, Suzuki Boulevard S40, Yamaha XVS 650, the Harley Davidson Street 500, and of course the Kawasaki Vulcan S. So the Honda Rebel CMX 500.
Yes, and I did. I wasn't as you had talked earlier about possibly that Yamaha XVS 650 as a bike that you want to transition to, and I kind of did some research on that a little bit. And then the Rebel, I kind of knew. I didn't know anything about the Suzuki S40, so I did some stuff, and then the Harley Street. Like I said, that's not really a big popular bike here in the States. But the thing about those bikes, the one underlying factor of all of them, when you restrict the Vulcan S's horsepower to 46 with a throttle stop and the electronics, all of those bikes are in that 45, 46 horsepower range or lower. In fact, most of those bikes are at, I've got my notes here. The Honda puts out about 46 horsepower, the Suzuki about 30 horsepower, the Yamaha about 40 horsepower, and the Harley 36. And de-restricted, the Kawasaki puts out about 46. Now, once you unrestrict the Kawasaki, you're up to the manufacturer horsepower rating of about 60 horsepower or thereabouts. And so the thing I thought was kind of unique is, of all those bikes, only two of them are carbureted, and that's the Suzuki S40 and the Yamaha 650, the XVS 6. Those are carbureted, and those are both air-cooled. The rest of the bikes are liquid-cooled and meet all of the qualifications that you say. And
what were the two bikes? Yamaha XVS 650, and what was the other one?
The Suzuki S40, that's a carbureted bike as well.
All right.
And both of those bikes, the Suzuki and the Yamaha, are both air-cooled. So all the other bikes, the Honda, the Kawasaki, and the Harley, are fuel-injected and water-cooled. And I've got my little notes here. The other thing that I thought was kind of unique is that when you look at the seat height with all those bikes, the lowest seat height was that Suzuki at 701 millimeters, and the tallest of the bike was the Harley at 720. So we're talking about maybe 20 millimeters difference in seat height across those bikes, and so that's pretty slim. I mean, that's what, 3/4 of an inch or something like that. So that they're all basically the same street height. The weights are all roughly the same. The Kawasaki comes in around 500 pounds plus or minus 5. The Harley's about 514. The Yamaha's the heaviest at 545. The Suzuki, the lightest. And what people need to understand with the Suzuki, that's just a one-lunger. That's just one cylinder going up and down. It weighs about 385 pounds or thereabouts. But the cylinder is huge. It's 652 cc's. So it's quite a large motor, if you will, from that standpoint. So of all of those, you've got a couple of V-twins in there, a couple of inline twins. The other thing that I thought was kind of funny is the ones that were carbureted, the Suzuki and Yamaha, and air-cooled, are also the only ones with a 5-speed transmission.
Yeah.
All the others have 6-speed. So that was different. Now they have different drive systems. A couple of them have shaft drives. The Honda has a shaft drive, and the Yamaha has a shaft drive. But the Suzuki and Harley are both belt driven, and the Kawasaki is the only one that has a chain drive on it. So, and from a price standpoint, a price range, the cheapest one obviously is the Suzuki. These are manufactured suggested retail prices, MSRPs. The Suzuki runs around $6,100, and you can go all the way up to the Yamaha, which is about $8,800. I'm assuming that kind of fits in the price range that you were looking at.
That's American dollars.
Yeah, that's USD. Yeah. So you have to, if you're in the UK or Europe, you have to do your little conversion, but that's all USD American dollars. And from like I said, from a Lamb's perspective, all of those bikes meet the Lamb's restrictions. So you have that, whatever, you can meet those as a new rider. But the real, if you're really looking for horsepower and the rest of it, then the Kawasaki is really the only one, because you can de-restrict it. I'm not saying that people should go put your, what is it, a year in, John? A year or 2 years? You have to ride?
2 years.
Yep. So my advice, I guess, is you ride your 2 years and then you de-restrict it. Now, I know that there's a lot of videos out there that show you how to do that. I'm not advocating that. All I'm saying is that, the Kawasaki obviously has a lot more horsepower. It's the old Ninja motor is what that is, and that motor in a Ninja is 70 horsepower. So it's there's a lot to be had.
Well, the other thing for a learner is, or someone riding for the first time, they want a bike that they can have in a year's time that's powerful enough for them, so they don't have to resell it and buy a larger bike. And the Kawasaki Vulcan S fits that.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, a lot of people start off on the 250s, 300s, and that works for them. But my suspicion is that after you've owned that bike a year or two, you're going to want more. And the other thing is with you have a smaller motorcycle engine like that, in order to develop the horsepower, you're gonna have to run the RPMs up. I think that 300 Ninja runs to like 10,000 RPMs or better. I mean, it's a very high spirited engine. But in order to get the horsepower, you have to wring them out. And it's not that it's going to hurt the engine or anything. They're designed for that, but it's just and then people start gravitating to other bikes size wise and horsepower wise, whatever. Now the Kawasaki Vulcan S kind of fits both worlds. I mean, you can buy it, it's restricted, and you can run your 2 years de-restricted, and then you've got basically a different motorcycle. And in the meantime, there's a lot of accessories that you can put on that bike to get it any way you want. Saddlebags, tank bags, tail bags, seats. They have a little cafe fairing. There's other companies that make those full fairings like you had on your white one. So you can do a lot. You can do a lot of different things with the Vulcan S.
Actually, just wanted to say, I was talking about why I chose the Vulcan S and not the Harley Davidson Street 500. The other thing was the tacho. Vulcan S has a tacho, the Harley Davidson doesn't. And I guess you could buy an aftermarket tacho, but why would you when the Vulcan S has it already on it?
Well, and that's it. I mean, the Street 500 is pretty much a bare bones bike, but I think you'll also notice that on a lot of V twins, they don't give you tachometers. There's really, unless you're talking about an Indian V twin, possibly a Moto Guzzi or something like that, but most of the big V twins, by 3,000 RPM, 4,000 RPM, you're shifting. So there's really, quote unquote, no need for attack. You're never gonna hit real high RPMs with it, because the V twins produce a lot of torque. But if they're restricted because of the country or whatever state that you're in, then the V twins are a little limited. But that, again, that's a personal choice. It's a styling choice. I mean, there are people that love the Honda Rebel. They love their Yamaha. I mean, it's like you were saying earlier. if you're a Harley guy, you're a Harley guy.
Yeah.
If you're a Kawasaki, I had a couple of Kawasaki's back in the 70s. They were always good to me. I also own a Suzuki and a Honda, but I just kind of gravitate to a brand name, and Kawasaki was that brand name. And ditto for you. I mean, you had the same thing. You had a great deal with that 1 liter KZ. So, if you've had success with a particular brand of motorcycle or car, you tend to gravitate that way.
Yeah. The other thing, the Yamaha XVS 650. I was looking at for a while, but not to replace the Vulcan S with it. It was always going to be a second bike. I wouldn't give up the Vulcan S. It's too good a bike.
Well, other than price, the other bike, if I was going to do that, the other bike that I might go look at is a Harley Street Bob or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Have the Kawasaki for whatever, and then the Harley. But I just don't ride enough. It doesn't suit my needs for that. So having two bikes in the garage, and the insurance, the cost, maintenance, all that stuff, it's just not worth it. I guess if I really wanted to go touring with my wife, if she was even interested in that, I'd go get myself a Goldwing. I mean, I had great success with the Goldwing, so I'd go get me a used Goldwing. But still, they're $15,000 to $20,000. That's a lot of money to be sitting in your garage half the year, because here in Michigan, you're only riding 6 months out of the year. So.
Yeah. Well, we better end the chat here now, but. Thanks, Alan. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, John. Have a great day, all right? Take care of yourself.
See you, mate. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoy these videos, subscribe to the channel. The Quacker John Vulcanist show is on every Friday night at 10 PM Brisbane, Australia time. You are most welcome to join in. You are most welcome to join the Quacker John chat room. And the link for your invitation to join the chat room is in the comments under the video. I published a book called My Kawasaki Vulcanist Adventures, and it is available on the Amazon website. See ya!